Hello and welcome back to the Earthy Goodness Kitchen. Today we're creating plant-based sausages out of whole food ingredients which are high in protein but also totally delicious. We're not using any textured vegetable protein or vital wheat gluten, so we don't need steaming. So let's get cooking. We're going to be flavouring these sausages with some caramelised onions and some fried mushrooms. The onions will provide a lovely sweet and rich flavour, and then the mushrooms will stop the sausages from going dry and also provide a nice umami, meaty flavour. So to start, we're going to simply finely slice 3 onions. This is the sort of recipe I would make on the weekend, as it takes slightly longer than your average recipe, but it's 100% worth it, and you can also make them in bulk and freeze them. We'll then prepare some fresh herbs. I've got some rosemary, some thyme and some parsley. I'm just going to roll them up and finely chop them. You could use dried herbs instead if you'd like to. This method of chopping here is called the cross chop, and you're just going to rest your hand on the top of the blade of the knife and rock your knife through the herbs to get them nice and fine. Be careful not to let your hand get too close to the end of the knife. Another way to keep these sausages nice and moist but also add some extra flavour is with some grated apple or pear. I just happen to have a pear, so that's what I'm going to be using. I'm using a combination of mushrooms for these sausages. I've got some portobello mushrooms and also some chestnut mushrooms. These are going to help keep the sausages nice and juicy and give them a nice meaty and umami flavour. If you want to get the cheapest mushrooms, I'll get some white butter mushrooms. You can get a whole punnet for about 70p, closely followed by chestnut mushrooms. They're fairly cheap, and then the portobello mushrooms, they're a little bit more expensive. Give your mushrooms a rough chop. We don't need to get them too small, as we're going to be putting them into the food processor. I'll give them a few pulses and then get in there with a spatula and just give them a quick stir to make sure they're all being chopped up evenly. Once you've finished chopping them, don't wash out the food processor, as we're going to be using it again very soon. This is how you want them to look at the end, finely chopped but still with a bit of texture. Heat up a frying pan over a high heat. We're going to cook out the mushrooms until all the water is evaporated and we're just left with a beautiful umami, rich and meaty mushroom paste. Once they're cooked, give them a little season with some salt and pepper. Don't worry about washing out the pan, because we're going to use it again to caramelise the sliced onions. You could use the slow method of caramelising onions, where you cook them for around 50 minutes until nice and soft, but today I'm going to show you a quick method. So the key is to cook them over a medium-high heat and also not to stir them too often, just every 2 to 3 minutes. Once they're starting to get a little bit of colour on them, I'm going to add a touch of maple syrup, and this is going to speed up the caramelisation process. With this method, you should get beautiful caramelised onions in 10 minutes or less. We'll then blend up the rest of the ingredients for the sausages, starting with some walnuts. Just make sure you actually put the blade in first. Then some oats to help bind everything together. We'll blend this a few times until we've got a sort of rough, sandy texture. Next going in are some white beans, but you can use any that you have on hand. Dried oregano, and then the fresh herbs that we chopped earlier. Tomato puree. Some dark soy sauce to enhance the meaty flavour, and then some mustard. A touch of grated nutmeg, which really complements the other flavours. Then we're going to blend it up into a rough paste. I like a bit of texture in my sausage, but you're welcome to blend it until it's completely smooth. Add the paste into a large bowl. We're going to follow it up with the mushrooms and the caramelised onions that we cooked earlier. Then the grated pear or apple. I'm just going to strain it from the liquid that has come out of it. Season your sausages with some black pepper. Don't worry about salt, as there is a lot in the soy sauce. For some extra protein but also texture, I'm going to add some crumbled up extra firm tofu. These sausages are great as they're not only nutrient dense but also protein rich from the tofu, the beans and the nuts. Then just give it a mix until everything is well combined. You could use a spoon here, but it's a lot easier just using your hands. At this point I could tell the mixture was slightly too wet, so I added some ground almonds to help firm it up, and that did the trick perfectly. You could of course just increase the quantity of oats or walnuts at the beginning of the recipe. I'm also going to pop the mixture in the fridge for around 20-30 minutes just to help it firm up even more. This is optional, but I'm just going to use a third cup to measure out the sausage meat so that they're all roughly even. Then using slightly wetted hands to stop the mix from sticking, I'm going to roll them all out into sausages. We'll then make a quick glaze to help stick the rice paper to the sausage meat, which is going to help keep everything nice and contained. Starting with some Marmite. If you're not in the UK, then hopefully there's somewhere you can buy it online. If not, use some dark soy sauce. Then we're going to go in with some miso, a couple of teaspoons, and a touch of maple syrup. Then a little bit of boiling water and some olive oil. Whisk everything together, and that will give you a beautiful sweet and salty glaze to go on those sausages. We're going to put the glaze under the rice paper to help it stick, but also on top so the sausages get nice and caramelised when we go to fry them. It's also going to give the sausages a lovely salty, rich crust. To give the sausages a nice crispy skin, we're going to be wrapping them in rice paper, which looks like this. These are what they use to make spring or summer rolls, and you can find them in some supermarkets, but you might have to go to an Asian supermarket. These ones are a little bit smaller than the usual ones. If you get the normal ones, you'll probably have to cut them in half and then use each half for one sausage. Get yourself a bowl of warm water. We're going to dip the rice paper in for around 3 seconds and then shake off any excess water. Then place your sausage at one end of the rice paper. We're going to roll it up nice and tight, almost like a little burrito. The rice paper can get quite sticky, so I suggest putting them onto baking paper, but also making sure that none of the sausages are touching each other or else they will stick to each other. As you take the rice paper out of the water, it won't feel soft enough to roll, but give it 10 seconds on the chopping board and it'll be good to go. So make sure you don't leave it in the water for any longer than 3 or 4 seconds. Here's a little close up as it is quite fiddly, but once you've done 1 or 2, you'll get the hang of it. Now, although I've gone for quite traditional flavours with mushrooms and onions, you could add other flavours such as sun-dried tomatoes, olives, you could go for like a spicy harissa sausage, or even some Mexican chipotle. So many options, and it's totally up to you. So there you have your sausage perfectly encased in the rice paper, and I'm just going to do the rest of the sausages. We'll then give them another glaze in that salty, delicious sauce. I haven't tried cooking these in the oven or air fryer yet, but I expect around 10 minutes in the air fryer and 15 minutes in the oven should do the trick. They already look good enough to eat, but we're of course going to fry them. So heat up a frying pan over a medium heat, we're going to get it nice and hot, and then we're going to fry the sausages for a couple of minutes on each side. Once they're looking golden brown on one side, turn and repeat for the remaining sides. I also like to fry off either end of the sausages. If you've got any of that sticky glaze left, you can brush that on while they're cooking. So that is the end result. You've got beautiful meaty mushroom and onion sausages ready to be enjoyed. So here is the finished result. We've got a beautiful meaty sausage ready for your full English breakfast or in a sandwich with mashed potato, whatever you like. I've just cut one in half so we can have a quick look inside. You can see the beautiful rich mushrooms, the caramelized onions, and then the little bits of tofu as well for that extra protein kick. Sausages were definitely one of my favourite things to eat back when I did eat meat, so it's nice to find a healthy alternative that I can make at home, and we're going to give it a quick taste now. So good. Oh, that is like the perfect sausage. Now there's only one thing that can make this better, and that is to dip it in some tomato ketchup. They've got a lovely firm texture, they've got a nice juiciness from the mushrooms and the caramelized onions, and there's a nice fragrant flavour coming from the herbs, a slight chew from the tofu, and then that lovely salty umami outside from the marmite and the miso. You have to give these sausages a go. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please do subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I'll see you in a new video very soon. Bye bye. Looking for some more plant-based goodness? Then check out this video.